Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, we are pleased to present our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, as he presents Whiggamores, the truth about American politics. But before he gets started, be sure to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with others. Now let's receive our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey.
Salam, salam, shalom, Vadimekum. We're going to talk about the Whiggamores because of the politics that are taking place today. Have a lot of people confused, and a lot of people have been suffering activities initiated by people in these political parties that you know as Republicans and Democrats, relative to their properties, relative to the abrogation of their rights, relative to abridgments and abrogations, and violations against human rights, about war acts against humanity, acts of war against humanity, violations against all the treaties, etc. And logically, with most of you who have been experienced attacks on your economics in different angles, whether you have investment or whether you have business, or fraudulent taxation, etc. And you see people having a lot of conversation about the politics, but when talking to many of the people, you recognize that they don't know the history of the politics operating at North America in contemporary times. So we're going to give you a little synopsis about the Whiggamore Party. And also we suggest that you take notes. And in the future, we're going to deal with a little bit more details in these matters. And also, one of the things that I want to emphasize to you is the misconception that people have of separating the political atmosphere of North America, Central and South America of the continent, of the Maghreb, that's Morocco, the most extreme west, the North Gate, the central part, where the old Mexican rulership has its root, and also with Iberia, which you know as Europe, and also the connections of the politics to us here that has come down to this present time that has caused much confusion. So while we can't go through all of it, we'll give you notes and some things for you to research in order to upgrade your consciousness on the actuality of the politics. Also, the motivations of many of the people in the secret societies who have been operating at North America and promoting their unum sanctum agendas of colonial operations of the hybrid European hegemony around the world. And so in order to understand the politics that's been operating here, you must have a broader concept of the actual parties that have been deceptively operating at North America. i.e., the Whiggamores. Now, for one to more properly comprehend the complexities and the deceptive nature of the political parties operating at North America and under the United States political jurisdiction in these contemporary times, one must have some knowledge about the Whiggamore Party. The misinformed people among us are most familiar with the two monopoly protected parties, symbolized by an elephant for the Republicans, which is the Republican Party, and symbolized by a donkey for the Democrats, which is the Democratic Party. Now, these are controlled political schism parties veiled in historical and political deception. While there are other political parties operating at North America, these are not the focus of this treatise, as they have been almost completely excluded from real or actual effective participation via de facto structures, engineered schisms, and the obviously entrenched and anti-constitutional corruption. In context with and in association with the operations of the Whiggamores at North America, all neophytes and scholars may and should review the associated political connections to the Napoleonic Wars. Now, these wars spanned the years 1803 to 1815. Also, as a backdrop on the political atmosphere and influences at North America and the occupational colonization operations, etc., influenced via unum sanctum, review the frauds surrounding the misrepresented and so-called Louisiana Purchase and the wars against the Aboriginal Moors, Al-Moroccans, the true natural people of the land, and review the wars against the Washita, the Dugdamunye, and the ancient ones, among the true heirs of the North Gate of Amexem. And now we address some points of interest concerning the Whiggamores. On the 4th day of December of 1839, the Whigs held their national convention for selecting their candidate for president. That convention was held at Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and was about a year before the general election. The leading candidates were William Henry Harrison, who was a war hero and was also the most successful of the opponents of Van Buren in the election of 1836, and had been campaigning for the Whig nomination since that time. Another candidate was General Winfield Scott, who was a war hero of the War of 1812, and who was also known to have been very active in skirmishes with the British in 1837 and 1838. The third candidate was Henry Clay, who was the Whigs' congressional leader and former Speaker of the House. Important notation: to place the political and social reconstruction-oriented acts and concepts into proper perspective, one must be aware that the practice of calling hybrid Europeans of the Paleolithic stock, quote unquote, white people, originated with the Whiggamore Party and their social political activities. A Whig is a member of the Patriotic Party during the Revolutionary War period and is a supporter of the Revolution. The expressive era of the Whigs Party is circa 1834 to 1855 and was formed in opposition to the Democratic Party, favoring a loose construction of the Constitution and of a high protective tariff. In British politics, a Whig is a member of a major political party located at Great Britain, which in general held liberal principles and favored reforms. Now, these Whigs were later called the Liberal Party. Whigs were also pertaining to or characteristic of members of a band of Scottish rebels and marched on Edinburgh in 1648. The Aboriginal Scots were and are Iberians, i.e., Moors. Because of the highly principled standards of jurisprudence expressed in the traditions and customs of the Moors, the Whigs Party members donned curly wigs to imitate or to associate with those said governmental and jurisdictional traditions and customs of the Moors. And these positive law principles are loosely referred to as, quote unquote, the common law. A veiling terminology was adopted for such adaptations and is noted as Whig, WHIG, plus black in parentheses, then a Moor. And so when you see the term black or Moor in history, this is where the connotation of black was adjusted to Moors when the word black actually means pale colors, but actually to remove the people of the land from their right of supremacy relative to sovereignty and the people of the land. And when you come into the operations of the Revolutionary War and the reconstruction of the history, much of this politics is hidden from the people. So it is being shared with you tonight so that your concepts would be more attuned with the actuality of what's going on, as well as the motives of those persons who are operating in government, in the banking systems, in the pseudo dogmatic religious orders, all of which have been and are absolutely connected. The Whigs Party had nominated 3 party members as candidates for the presidency for the United States during the election of 1836. And none of these Whig candidates were successful. However, the aspiring participants did not succumb to discouragement. And in 1840, the Whigs Party nominated and supported William Henry Harrison for president, with John Tyler for vice president. This time, the Whigs won the executive office. Unfortunately, William Harrison died after 1 month in the presidential office. Horace Greeley, he's a very important figure that you must always keep in mind to understand the politics of today, including the Republican Party, including the operations, whereas the hybrid Europeans starting at North America began calling themselves white people. Horace Greeley, after giving support and taking part in the successful presidential campaign of William Henry Harrison, and boosted by the subsequent founding of his Tribune newspaper, also became heavily involved with the aforesaid Whiggamore Party, which was later referred to as the Whigs, WHIGS. It shall be noted that this hybrid European-dominated political order and radical party thereafter was and almost always spoken about, known or called by its shortened form, the Whigs. Now, these are some of the facts known of the man Horace Greeley and of his influences and activities. Few notations are given so as to assist the reader or observer as an ancillary in maintaining a reasonably close or more accurate view and timely concept of, about, and on his politics and his opinions, etc. Number 1, Horace Greeley was the founder of the Republican Party. 2, Horace Greeley initiated an investigation of the United States Congress, of which he was a participant. He was an active member of the House of Representatives for 3 months. However, his unrelenting candor, uncompromised outspokenness, and generally principled character made him less than popular with many of his colleagues. 3, Horace Greeley gave strong and affirmative support to Abraham Lincoln's candidacy for the presidency of the United States. 4, Horace Greeley urged President Lincoln to end slavery. That passionately suggested pressure came from Greeley even before Lincoln himself demonstrated evidence in showing a willingness to act upon that institutionalized and banal form of human trafficking, peonage, and social corruption. Five, Horace Greeley was one of the most prominent active political figures among the hybrid European sons at North America. He strongly promoted the adopted practice among the sons and daughters of European descent to take for themselves the social status title of quote unquote white people, from which they were formerly excluded. Thus, Greeley was a key propagator of promoting the practice of the occupying hybrid Europeans adopting the practice of arbitrarily taking on the free white person's social status. Thus, the hybrid Europeans have since 1854 been socially trading places in the social structure with the politically and economically weakened Aboriginal noble Moors, the sovereign rulers of the land, America. In context with the social, economic, and political events involving and surrounding Horace Greeley, the transitional times and undoubtedly reflective of the concerns of other European sons and daughters, one must be cognizant of the prevailing cultural state influenced by some of the long-lasting and harsh standards set forth and institutionalized via King Hammurabi Bey's Code of Law. Keep in mind the the general disconnect maintained among the masses due to the inquisitor operations of massive book burnings and other extreme forms of literary destruction, as formerly stated, the true history of the Moabite Moorish nation was being systematically suppressed, distorted, veiled, and hidden. This suppressed chronology is known and kept in silence by some, unknown by others, and in the same instance, preserved by way of secret societies such as Freemasonry, Knights of Columbus, and Daughters of the American Revolution, etc. And much of the true history of the world and of the Aboriginal natural peoples is void of exposure to the general public and to the masses. This absence of revelation is not by accident, nor by oversight. Therefore, the disassociate conditions reflective of the natural peoples, as caused by the absence of those many veiled truths, has spawned many unnecessary schisms and hatreds. A general lack of knowledge about the true yet suppressed history of and about the natural peoples of the land of the Western Hemisphere and of the world also promotes disassociation by creating and encouraging the very static mental state of mind fostered by the artificially cultivated fraudisms, and the result has spawned a damaging promulgation of ignorance, of hatred, of meanness, and of other forms of lower self-activities. The Whiggamore Party, the Whigs, being a highly influential part of the evolving United States body politics history at North America, was one of the two dominant and active hybrid European political parties having prominent political operations during the middle 1830s and up to the middle 1850s. The Whiggamore Party grew out of the defunct National Republican Party and was formed mostly by that party's former members. And this formation was on or about the year 1834. Now, these Whigs members, in unity with others, were staunchly opposed to those British peoples, the Tories, and against the politics expressed via the Democratic Party. The conscience Whigs, the anti-slavery Whigs. The philosophical split or schism that developed within the Whigs Party due to the internal socialization and political conflictions became so strong as to cause the Whigs to become almost separate. And these two factions became known as the conscience Whigs on the one side and the cotton Whigs on as the other. And the conscience Whigs were known to be those European sons, daughters, and associate supporters among the Whigs who were in staunch opposition to slavery, imposed peonage, and human trafficking. Other sympathizers supporting liberties should also be taken into consideration, and the conscience Whigs were also generally active in organizations formed against the politically practiced and inherent escheatage, vassalage, and the peonage characteristics attributed to such human trafficking activities. The other is the Cotton Whigs, the pro-slavery Whigs. The more inhumane side of the Whigs Party was known as the Cotton Whigs and consisted of those members of the Whigs Party who were supportive of and politically promoting slavery, promoting human trafficking, and promoting peonage. Therefore, in your continued erudition on the expanded studies about the Whiggamore Party, the Whigs, and the related and associated subjects, take some time to review these issues and note the contradictions as evidenced within the parties. Nevertheless, all neophytes and scholars and adepts must cognate that whenever one is reflecting upon the social and political motives of the hybrid European sons and daughters doing business at or administrating government at the North Gate and across the planet, one must also strongly consider and be cognizant of King Hammurabi Bey's code of law. Why? Because all these hybrid Europeans know that they are hybrids and are always cognizant of the codes. These are, in fact, these are facts, even if they do not speak of them openly. And these ancient codes are primal point of social and political reference, and are known and studied by those who study jurisprudence and by those who are in operative government, legislate, or who legislate the rules and the laws of the planet Earth, Midgard. Even in these days, while not often spoken about publicly or openly, Hammurabi's codes, above all, were and are of absolute influence. And this immovable fact is mentally, politically, and analytically placed and fixed into the time period, social context. One must observe the subtle pressures of the codes in the thought processes of the Whigs and use one's knowledge about the codes as a social political backdrop. One is deemed through, with hesitance, though with hesitance to relate to the not so subtle yet established residual effects of the harsh parts of the codes as related to the declaration of the children of Israel, to slavery under the Moorish nation, and with reason and with discipline view these histories with objective analysis, knowing of the suppressed nature surrounding the same. Also note that many of the Southern members of the Whiggamore Party had sided with the Unionists in the conflict and in matters involving the secession of the Southern states from the Union and other related activities and issues also broadened the breaches manifesting within the party during 1850. Now, the controversial, foul, and corrupt conditions and pressing questions caused by and involved with slavery and its social, economic, and political effects caused by exacerbated a split within the Whigs Party. And most influential in that split or schism, which marked the party, was a heated arguments, hostilities, and destructive activities which took place in the multiple places in other territories at North America. And of particular note, and a very impacting interest upon the Whigs was known as the Kansas Nebraska Act. Kansas Nebraska Act, mark that down to put it in context with the politics that you're dealing with today. If one is reminded to expand one's studies on the nature of the controversy surrounding that subject, and of the associated affairs conjoined to them. Therefore, research what is called the Kansas Nebraska Act. And out from the heated and terse philosophical and political split came the creation of not only the noted schism within the Whigs Party, but also the development and formation of another party. That party that evolved from that political disjointment and disharmony is now known as the Republican Party. Keep that in mind. Now, the Republican Party in general was supportive of constitutional principles and treaty enforcement. The Cotton Whigs were mostly in favor of deceptively overthrowing the Republic and eschewing the properties of the Moors and tagging the Moors as Negroes, Blacks, Indians, etc., to remove them from authority in superior position of consular court venues of the treaties and the constitutions in order to supplant the peoples of the land and enforce the unum sanctum operations. And this is where the misinformation of the fake race argument has its origin, that has been promoted to this very day to cover up the real activities of the Whiggamores and the unum sanctum operations and the doctrines of discovery. This is why you see whenever there was a case of Aboriginal people in conflict with their land, that the hybrid Europeans set up the Bureau of Indian Affairs in order to assume jurisdiction over the affairs of the Moors who agreed to be called Indians, to under the guise of retaining their sovereign rights to the treaties and to the land. And under that guise of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the hybrid Europeans would systematically, over the centuries, steal the land, steal the resources, and that practice has continued to this very day and is generally referred to as gentrification, i.e., there's the Whiggamore parties and there's your politics that you see taking place to this very day. And in reference to people who may not understand the politics, this is why you see much of the opposition from the Cotton Whigs, which you know as the Democratic Party, against Donald Trump, who ran for office under the guise of the Republican Party, who is also against Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has been operationally making efforts to restore the constitutions and the treaty enforcements. And this is part of the conflict that's going on to this very day. And it's absolutely Whiggamores battling each other over the Moorish estate to this very day. So understand the politics and don't be fooled by people who are distracting you to other issues, including the fake race argument and the fake Black Lives Matter paradigm, which they've been using to pit people against each other and then conquer them after they destroy their own communities. At the time, I will yield the floor, Dr. Nair. Any comments that you have? Also, for any interjections of yourself.
Somebody put in noted the names conscience or conscience and cotton.
Conscience Whigs and Cotton Whigs. Those are the two parties that have been disguised in the modern day, not so much disguised, but that you see for pretty much in the monopoly operations at North America, known to the general public as the Republican Party, which is the Conscience Whigs. That's CONSCIENCE Whigs. And the Cotton Whigs.
It's written almost like conscience.
That's what it is.
And so are they implying
conscience
that they have more,
meaning that the Conscience Whigs were the Whigs that were more honorable to the Constitution and the treaties. The Cotton Whigs were among members of the Roman Curia and secret members of the Circle Church and the Chancery, who, in fact, were among those who actually plotted and succeeded in the assassination of Lincoln in order to overthrow the Republic.
Well, I think it is ironic that the what became the Demo Party was called they call themselves Cotton Whigs, when according to his story there was a picking cotton.
That's what it symbolizes. In other words, now keep in mind, because people also need to really
a lot of symbolism exists.
It is, and people need to understand that one of the things that the hybrid Europeans were doing were stealing the Bonnevilles and murdering the Aboriginal people. Like a lot of times when people see pictures of
Bonnevilles with those small ships.
Bonnevilles were some of these places that you've been calling plantations that weren't really European hybrids. They were actually Moors on the land. A lot of times they'll show you pictures and say that those people were slaves,
and they were
not.
Yeah,
they were the owners.
Right.
So the whole history has really been corrupted. And it's unfortunate because many of our people have been following that line for many generations.
Well, that's why I said, they would once they were able to take pictures. I can see them coming through the various areas, and I'm talking about the Europeans, and said, "Hey, why don't you line up so I can take a picture? Oh, you get all the family together," and they work their own fields.
Some of them were just simply pictures from archives of families whatsoever, and then presented in a false paradigm.
Because weren't there? I heard Scott McKay say that we're over 2,500. He didn't say melanated, but he said black slave owners.
Sure.
During that time.
See, this is why now. This is back to Hammurabi Bay. See, this is the unfortunate situation that's happening at North America and what's happening in the world. By the hybrid Europeans, when they overthrew the Moorish Empire, and then keep in mind, we lost America before we lost Germany and Iberia. That must be understood. And the reconstruction of the history has to do with many of the hybrid Europeans are taking credit for servitude activities that actually was reversed. Was not, because slave is really an identity of the Slavic peoples. Now it's been used connotatively in contemporary construction of history, but it is improperly used. It's actually Slovakian. And so the slave in general applied to hybrid Europeans, although it is used contemporarily and wrongly in history to as from a connotative perspective to designate people who have been put into servitude or into peonage. And so another part of the unfortunate result of reconstructed history is that the hybrid Europeans have been credited with a lot of criminal enslavement that was actually themselves not in reverse. And so, again, when people know the real history, the guilt of human suffering is on both sides. It's not like one-sided the way that they've been telling it. And furthermore, many hybrid Europeans, when held in servitude, were also listed as blacks and Negroes. That's another thing that's been misrepresented. And also one of your largest biggest slaveholders at the Maghreb or at North America was a Moor.
Anthony Johnson.
Yes. And it's and for us to fix this social economic problem that we have today, that's been exported around the world. The truth must be told in order for us to fix things. Meaning that if you're not honest about or truthful about the true chronology and history of the walk of man, particularly in North America, we're not going to correct anything. And we must take responsibility, all of us, for the enforcement of the treaties and the Constitution for the United States, which comes from honor, honesty, confederation. That comes from us. Those principles are Moorish principles. They're fatwa. And even when you hear people talk about fatwa, they'll talk it in a negative when actually the Constitution for the United States comes from fatwa law, come from the Moors. It didn't come from the hybrid Europeans. And people need to understand. This is why it's important for people to understand or to look into American history in context with the Napoleonic Wars, because it was actually during those wars as they took over the monarchies of Iberia, i.e. Europe. Much of the corruption that we're experiencing today, they've been using dark magic, Babylonian magic, to rule the world ruthlessly.
Speaking of dark magic and Babylonian magic, I'm reading Synchronicity and the Seventh Seal.
Oh, Peter Moon, yeah.
Peter Moon. And so getting into it, I realized that dark magic was being used because that's what's in here, as well as Noble Drew Ali in here. So you got Ron L. Hubbard, you got Aleister Crowley, you got Jack Parsons. Yeah, you got Angst Hatton Ashram.
Yes.
Y'all, I'm telling you about a book that y'all need to go and get so we can all talk about this book. Got to be read. But can I share something
freely? Because I want to just make this note with you, Dr. Ireland.
Go ahead.
You will see. Remember, like Noble Drew Ali said, you're gonna make the European tell the truth.
Yes.
Now, and as we mentioned over the years, as the middle class of the hybrid Europeans have been thrown under the bus as true history starts coming about. And the truth about the Whiggamore Party operations, they just don't say Whiggamores. They'll just say the Democrats and the Republicans. Understand you're talking about the Whiggamores. Mm-hmm. As this comes out and all the corruption that has taken place on the planet since the Napoleonic Wars, etc., they didn't expect to be thrown under the bus. And so they're starting to expose some of the real history. And logically, people who don't know a background, won't put it in context. But once you have some of the actual historical records, you can understand the Moorish Divine and National Movement. You can understand the motive of Noble Drew Ali. You can understand when Noble Drew Ali set up the Divine and National Movement and the old Canaanite temple. You'll understand the opposition coming from the Queen of England. You can also understand why the Queen said he is who he said he is, given what he wants, etc. You also recognize why the different nations of the earth recognize Noble Drew Ali, because they recognize the real politics. You'll understand the motive of the infiltration with J. Edgar Hoover and the COINTELPRO operations. You'll understand even more about the history in relationship to Noble Drew Ali when you really understand the actual history, some of which I shared with you. Now let's share with us some of Peter Moon's writings.
Yeah, so in chapter 35, because I've kind of like been bouncing around since it.
Well, you can't help because there's so much really, right. And you try to give pertinent points to inspire the people to be more honest, to do some research, to remove their biases, to remove their hatreds, to deal with facts, and to come together with people from all walks of life to make life better on this planet for humanity, period. Which is the mission of the Moorish movement.
All right. I'm going to read, this is second chapter in second paragraph, chapter 35. After reading Peter Wilson's Sacred Drift, and I just ordered that book, I was a bit astonished to find out independently that Drew Ali was not only a real character in our history who not only appeared in the newspapers of his time, but has a substantial FBI file the entirety of which has not been released to the public at this time. In fact, he was doggedly scrutinized by J. Edgar Hoover's FBI during the Roaring Twenties. Although he was by no means the first Black Muslim in America, he is believed to be the first Black Muslim prophet. It is not surprising, and understand this is written by Albion. Okay. So it is not surprising that he has been obscured and forgotten by most white historians, but it is even more alarming that the majority of his fellow African Americans are equally ignorant of his incredible life. It will send the shock of ignorance through many people's nervous systems to learn that Drew Ali's murder was a pivotal point in history, which eventually gave rise to contemporary or recognized figures such as Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X, and Elijah Muhammad. Although these characters are not known to have shed any light on Drew Ali or his heritage, they would never have risen to their aggrandized station in life had it not been for his legacy. Should I continue?
Yes, go ahead.
Uh,
Until you feel that what you've shared has context for the people.
okay.
So things must be put in context.
Right. So Drew Ali's origins are somewhat obscure, and his life has taken on legendary proportions at times, but he definitely did exist. He was born on January 8th, 1886, in North Carolina. His mother was a Cherokee, and his father was of Moorish descent. His parents are believed to have met and studied under a quote unquote master adept known as Jamal al-Din al-Agani, who visited the U.S. From 1882 1883. At this time, they were initiated into an Islamic sect known as the Brethren of Purity, an Ismaili faction from Cairo, which sought to preserve the knowledge lost from the Alexandria Library. Although Peter Wilson suggests Drew Ali may have been a circus magician as a young man, it is pretty safe that he was skilled in his trade. You can clearly see his influence later on in his life when circus-style posters were used by him to draw big crowds for his religious gatherings. I'm not saying whether this stuff is true or not, but it's what he written. Prior to World War I, he visited Egypt, met the last priest of an ancient cult who took him into the Great Pyramid blindfolded. When Drew Ali made his way out unassisted, the priest initiated him and gave him the name Sharif Abdul Ali. On this trip to the Mideast, Ali put together a book known as the Circle 7 Quran. Upon his return to America, he became known as Drew Ali. In Newark, New Jersey, at the age of 27, he had a dream where he was ordered to start a religion, quote unquote, for uplifting of fallen mankind with particular attention to the Black race. He believed that Blacks are genuinely Moors who are descendants of the biblical Moabites and later inhabited what is now the country of Morocco. Although Ali's Circle 7 Quran had been picked apart by scholars and found to be largely borrowed from other texts, including the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, the origins and secrets of Ali's Moorish Science Temple are far more obscure and mysterious. When one studies mystery schools, it is wise to remember that there is usually an outward front, but also an inner circle that is much more mysterious and often revolves around a character or entity which seeks to remain invisible. By all appearances, Drew Ali was a kind and loving man who sought no conflict with white people. In fact, he specifically stated that whites, this is interesting, could claim the same status as Blacks by declaring themselves to be Celts or Celts and therefore Asiatic. The Celts originated in Central Asia and migrated to the British Isles via Africa. The Moorish Science Temple was predominantly Black, but was not exclusive in terms of race. Ali's purpose was not only to correct the horrible wrongs that had been committed against the people of his own heritage, it was also to restore the lost wisdom that they once possessed, which had enlightened the Western world for several centuries. And I'm going to stop right there because there's a lot more. But that right there is a lot. And the fact that, I think what struck me in that, one of the things,
how much has been held back on the people.
Well, and that he has it as a modern European feels like, his own people don't know who he is.
All right.
They don't know who they are, so they don't know who he is.
Yes. But keep in mind with the infiltration, when you do research in the FBI papers, you will see that many of the people who became in those periods of time sheiks and sheikesses in the temple were actually plants of pastors and ministers, 33-degree Masons from the church, whose mission was to neutralize it because of the effect of the membership that was happening with the churches and the synagogues, with people coming into the Moorish movement from both of those orders, and he was considered an economic and political threat. So this is where you get the also a lot of the activities of the great sellout that people mention but don't talk about, and that would be this is why we already know that many scholars who have that information don't share that information with members of the Moorish Science Temple, so they don't recognize the motives of many of the people who are also still governing within the movement, etc., and who have credible positions. But when you start doing the research, you'll recognize who's who by their activities and also by the lack of certain activities.
Well, I think the thing that I found interesting in here that this was tied in with this, not just there's several chapters in here about Prophet Noble Drew Ali, but it's tied in with the fact that there was a lot of, like you said, sorcery. I call it sorcery and debauchery and so people like the Dianetics movement and stuff, which now makes a lot of sense as to why maybe certain people are their people through clearing via Dianetics, because there's some early back in the 20s and 30s connection between that nation and this kind of movement. I mean, I didn't know how far it went back. I thought this was just something that came up in the 20th century, 21st, beginning of the 21st century. But no, there's a connection that goes way back.
The interesting thing that when you're looking at this stuff from a position of scholarship, you recognize the important role that Drew Ali played in American politics that's not credited to the platform. And also the fact that much of what work that he's done is absolutely civic in character, but not credited as being civic in character.
At least a religious organization.
Yes, the affidavit. See, this is why it's important for people to look at the affidavit on the back of the questionnaire. When you look at the affidavit on the back of the questionnaire, you'll see that the Moorish Science Temple of America was adopted with the religious affidavit in 1928. And that, when you start doing the research in the FBI papers, you'll recognize it was a counter move on his part to protect the movement from the infiltration that had already taken place. So when people, and this is why you won't see them talking about the Moorish Holy Temple of Science being a civic organization, which is clearly there. The literature from the Moorish Science Temple of America, when I read that before, like if you had that, you can see where the Moorish Holy Temple of Science is a civic organization. The religious affidavit was adopted in 1928. Though the old Canaanite temple was established in 1913. And then when you look at the operations of the Wilson administration as a counter move on Jekyll Island, you understand the entirety of the politics. Absolutely. Then when you recognize the infiltration that took place in the 20s, right? You'll recognize when he set up the old Canaanite, Moorish Holy Temple of Science Civic Organization 25 and 26. And then you look into the corporation bankruptcies in 1925, and you see the United States Corporation at that time went bankrupt. And this is why a lot of people who don't understand the politics or understand the reality of the politics will sometimes say Noble Drew Ali bankrupted the United States. They understand that because the deal of it is because these people are de facto and the real sovereign actually stood up. But the people also were in a process of learning. People still didn't know the true message of Noble Drew Ali. That part of it is the restoration of the estate and the true rulers of the land, i.e., which is the people who have been subjugated under the black codes, who even to this day keep thinking it's a religious argument, don't even know it's an issue of birthright. But the more and more when you start doing research, when you start looking at it from a perspective of scholarship, like Peter Moon, other hybrid Europeans, etc., who are looking at it more objectively, even though some of them still may be using connotative linguistics, you understand that they're looking at it from a research perspective,
right,
not from a clubism or necessarily a biased position. They're just looking at things that surprised them as they found out the real politics of North America. And it was kind of shocking to some of them because it's not what they expected. However, like he said, the more interesting thing is to recognize how many of the people of the land don't know this history, don't know this politics. But again, you know why we do what we do here at the House of Reawakening Minds. We try to share things with the people that wake them up, that have been held back by both hybrid Europeans and so-called black scholars. And it's really kind of like disheartening and disgusting, but you can't get disgusted. You got to get the work done. You say, don't complain about the trash on the ground, pick it up.
Yeah, definitely. Something that you live by.
And then you also understand why when you start giving this information, why trolls come out like roaches. Why? Because it changes the whole political paradigm that the people have been living under for decades, for a century. Actually, they don't know the real history of North America. And again, the politics. You see how people are arguing about the politics and they don't even know that these parties are the Whiggamores? They don't even know that the problems that they're having from these political parties is arguments within the Whiggamores among themselves over your estate.
Yeah.
They don't even know that these black tags and stuff come from them. They don't even know that these hybrid Europeans aren't white people, that we're the white people. They traded places with this. That's why they did the movie Traded Places at Philadelphia, at Shakamatsu. That was strategic. That's a message. But even like we all know, why the Mummer's Parade takes place, only related to this. And how many people don't even know that the Mummer's Parade operation is related to this?
And what was the other? Where's the other place? And the other one is the Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras. And this is why in the Louisiana Purchase, when they ran us, and many of our families is from the Powhatan Confederation. Whether you're talking about the Seminole, the Washita, the talking about Matoaka. The whole thing about Matoaka that they fake up and call Pocahontas, which is a fictional name. And they're taking over, and the Trail of Tears. All of these are Moors. And they separate us, making us think that we different people. Then they made up that other term, Native American, African American, to twist us from each other, make us think that we're different people. Schism. All that is schism. All that is fiction. But the fact of the matter is, it's been operative among our own people, which is again why our people are disconnected from the land, disconnected from the treaties, disconnected from constitutional enforcement, because they don't see themselves. They don't even know it came from them. However, it's good that some of the Europeans, hybrid Europeans, are telling the truth now, because it's in everybody's interest. Because now many of the hybrid, the dark, they might call themselves demon Satan worshippers, etc., and human sacrificers among the hybrid Europeans who've been destroying the planet and destroying the world. It's like it's in everybody's interest to start telling the truth now, and it actually seems like they're out to lunch. However, the reality is the truth must be told in order to bring humanity back to a point of civilization, so that civilization itself doesn't collapse under the corruption of the hybrid operators under the unum sanctum policy. because the world, they've corrupted so many governments on the planet and destabilized the whole planet. Now it's sort of like it's in everybody's interest now to start telling the truth, and they've been lying for so many generations. They don't even know how to tell the truth right. However, some of them are starting to tell the truth. And there's some other points that Peter shared with the people that you feel that are relative to comprehending the operations of the cotton Whigs and the consigns Whigs and their battle over the Moorish estate. Share that.
Now, I just think it's so much in this book. It needs to be. It would be a good thing for to have discussions over and have others read it, because the way he writes is a mixture of a
sort of like
theatrical story form, but but truth, and
because it's really in harmony with in some ways with, even like you see how a lot of Moors, across the country, some of the dances that they do, etc., the nature of the dance, the shaking of the shoulders, etc., the wiggling of the hips, the stepping, etc., the jumping, the kicking, etc. Those are ancient traditions, and although the people may have forgotten some of the traditions or the nature of replication of acts or nature, the animals in nature, etc., and how nature works and the symbolism of the operations of nature, a lot of them forget that. However, when you start researching, you can still see the tracing back to the ancient world. A lot of things haven't changed in the different territories. It's just that the people don't recognize their relationship to each other. But that'll come together in due time. But again, as we were mentioning earlier, it's important for people, just like Drew Ali said. Hopefully, we can get rid of some of these ancient hatreds. But if the people don't know the histories, they have limited or no knowledge of how a lot of these hatreds have their origin. A lot of these distrusts have their origin. But when they know this real history, the politicians and both local and federal and state can no longer fool the people because they understand their motives. Why it's important for the people to understand, if they don't know the Whiggamore Party and they're talking about these politics today, they're 90% wrong. Doesn't mean that they're lacking intelligence. They lack information. And so their concepts are wrong because the root of the information that was given to them is incorrect. However, having this knowledge also empowers our people to be more competent in their ongoing activities of taking their proper places among the affairs of men and reinstituting their obligations to enforce the supreme law of the land, which are the treaties and the Constitution for the United States, of which Donald Trump is in harmony with. And so people who are angry with him really need to know the history to kind of understand the politics. And that's not a sanctioning, and that's not, like I said before, I'm not saying or putting Donald Trump in front about anything, because the United States corporation is dead. Politically is dead. It's just that the people are still in a state of civil litter mortuus, of which we're doing the best that we can, along with others, to bring our people out of that state of civil litter mortuus and bringing them to a state of in full life activities, etc. And then from among our people, trusting that people with good intentions and with pure hearts will become active in reestablishing or activating the actual political forums by which we take our places among the affairs of men via their consular obligations in relationship to Act 1 of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws, etc., demonstrated via the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, etc., and activated properly with a cognizance of the civic platform from which that was constructed with the Moorish Holy Temple of Science as a ground of training and practice within our order, and then taken out into the world. When you take it out into the world, now you're in a consular venue via treaty and constitution, distinguished from internal affairs. So that would be international affairs, etc. And this is why it's important for people to really understand when Raleigh say enforce the Constitution and the treaties. Because our people think that the Constitution itself is the law, supreme law by itself, known as the treaties and the Constitution. That's why it's important for people to recognize Article 3, Article 4, Section 4, and Article 6, Supremacy Clause. Also, why in the nobility clauses, etc., of the Constitution, particularly when you talk an original article of Amendment 13 with its 20 section referred to as a 1320, why that's not exposed or taught to the people. And also the people need to recognize why Pharisees and Sadducees, by law, by fatwa, were not allowed to hold office in government, as they were actually knights for the papacy after the Napoleonic Wars to overthrow all the republic orders, etc., and to enslave humanity, which has been taking place all around the world, and particularly rooted from North America, from Canaan land that you call Canada now, and the United States corporation operations, which are actually a singular operation appearing to be separate for the sake of the people, but in fact are both operated from the Circle Church and the Chancery of Fleet Street, England, under the powers of the Pope of Rome, etc., and the Vatican's P2 Masons, etc. And keep in mind, do not confuse astrology, which is Masonry, as just belonging to the hybrid Europeans, although you see a lot of the damage that they've done on the world by misusing it or using it for dark purposes, etc. Actually, Masonry is more science, in fact. Now, that's also the truth that a lot of people aren't told, because it's always given a negative. And it's given a negative mainly because of people many who have belonged to the Freemason order under the Roman Curia have done so much damage to humanity. So they're looking at the Masonry as a principle of negativity, when it's not that. It is actually those who have misused the knowledge and held the knowledge back from the masses, and have actually mismanaged the operations of government around the planet for the purpose of world domination and hybrid European hegemony. That's the problem. So the real heirs to that knowledge, to the compass and the square, for those of you who may not have clarity because of limitation of time of some reference point, for those of you who have a Circle 7 Quran, read chapter 5 and also read chapter 23 and read chapter 47. And it would help you a lot in comprehending the philosophies of the Moors, etc., and also of what is commonly referred to in the Bible as the carpenter's tool, Jesus' carpenter's tool. And you know, Jesus means justice. And when it's presented biblically, it's an anthropomorphic presentment of the cosmos and the transits of the sun, and also cause and effect operations on planet Midgard, this particular planet we call Earth Midgard, etc. And our obligations here, while we are restoring proper stewardship of operations on the planet. There's some other points of reference you can make.
Yeah, because I've seen this every now and then, but here's one. Someone says, "Ha, stop with that consular madness. Go research the word and know it applies to foreigners on the soil of another."
Yes, it does. That's because consular venue is where all treaties are enforced around the world.
There's some
that's a venue. That's not a court by itself. That's when a court changes venue when issues of controversy come about between citizens and nationals of different political states. So when you're talking states, you're also talking nations. So you're talking venue. That's all over the world. And anyone that has what you call a diversity of nationality, whenever there's an issue of nationality, this is another reason why many of the private POW camps have been packed with Moors under the Christian black codes because they've been held artificially in a dead status. And those persons among themselves who claim rulership or viziership or any positions of power were actually listing themselves under the 14th Amendment of civil rights instead of nationals or the people of the land and enforcing international law. And all arguments were to be held in a consular venue. For those who doubt that, read Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution for the United States. And keep in mind, Noble Drew Ali said, help me in my great missionary work to bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government enforcing our Constitution for the United States. And you'll find that in a divine warning by the prophet for the nations. So if you're nationalized, you do not operate under the black codes. Any controversy would be a consular venue. That is a political venue. And any venue where controversy is held between people of different nation states would be a consular venue. And that's a fact.
Thank you for that. Here, Curtis Jones says, I've read and I think he was referred to Noble Drew Ali, had a lot to do with nation state as well. When he died, the Vatican was the first, in quotes, to start right after using Drew Ali's groundwork.
Well, of course, the major issue is this is why people need to know the history. That's like when we came into this, because we can't go through all of it. I say study the Napoleonic Wars from 1803 to 1815, because when they're teaching history of America, they do not include the Napoleonic Wars because they don't want people to tie back to Iberia, because you know that Iberia is Europe. Then when you know Iberia, then you trace back to Phoenicia, Nefertiti's daughter. Then you start recognizing Germany was actually Moorish. Then when you go into Iberian history, or what you call European history, you'll find that all the nobles were Moors. That's why a good book for those of you who have not been properly made erudite in the history of Iberia and America. One of the most awarded scholars in the world, named Joel A. Rogers, wrote a book called Nature Knows No Color Line, and started looking at the coats of arms of the real Picts and Moors, or nobles of Iberia or Europe, and she will see that they're all Moors, Aboriginal Moors. Not
no, second shelf. No, down. One more shelf down. Right there. Push back. Look back. The white book standing up.
Wait.
See the white book? Behind that.
Oh, yes. Matter of fact, Nature Knows No Color Line. And you'll find that the jurisprudence that is used today around the world came from you all, and you're not black, you're Moors. Get over it. You know, what you find is that when people, because when you start finding out the truth about Iberia, i.e. Europe, etc., those are noble families of Europe. Your concepts have been all wrong. That's why Noble Drew Ali says your concepts are all wrong. You know, and so when the hybrid Europeans took over Iberia, you know, the concepts are that many of those old castles, etc., in Germany, Scotland, they don't even know that Scot actually means dark.
Well, you got the last king of Scotland, and who played the?
No, they tell you even, you know, like when you mentioned that, Dr. Nayola, they tell you in different ways. But if you're not aware of this history, it doesn't dawn on you that you were the sovereigns or the monarchs that were overthrown, and the monarchies came from the pharaohs. It was the matriarchs. When you really study the history, not from the hybrid perspective that he's told you, those monarchs that were overthrown are really the matriarchs of the Moorish Moabite nation, which came from the ancient pharaohs of Egypt, that you call Egypt. All of them are Berber descent, Berber linguistic groups, Bantu, Mandinka, etc., all over the world. And the sooner you get real about the real politics and have a real comprehension and understanding of the jurisdictional powers of ancient Hutukta that you call Egypt, expand the world, not just on the east side of Amexem, the entire world. When you're looking at Tennessee area, Tennessee, Kentucky area, looking at Lower Egypt, it's a fact. That's the fact. Get over it. You look at those mounds and the pyramids all over the America. All of those are ancient, and some of them are even older on this side than they are on that side. So don't look at them as separate. Look at them as just being the land separated by a great earthquake. That's all. Mississippi was built by hand. By hand. It was not a natural river. It flows both ways, according to the seasons. While we build mounds all along it. It's also dealing with the fresh water routes up to the Great Lakes, which were also built for fresh water for the entire Western Maghreb. That's the truth. Get over it. You know, one of the points of reference for conquest for the hybrids is to steal a lot of Moorish history. This and the Whiggamore party is a perfect example. Even the name of the parties, Whig, a Moor. They put on wigs to imitate the Moors. They've been stealing your estate for the last couple centuries. Get over it. They've been trading places. So now, we've done enough damage on the planet. It's time to start telling the truth. Start fixing things up. Start learning of your higher self and your lower self. Start moving to the dark side and start moving to the higher self. So your higher planes of light are really the dimensions. They're states of mind. And so when you're coming into fourth and fifth and sixth dimension, it's a consciousness. It's an energy. It's a consciousness and a connection to nature and the operations of reality. Not a place to go, country to be reached. So heaven is a state of mind, the activation of the pineal gland. And as the pineal gland activates, you will enter into what they call more dimensional consciousness. And of course, that's conjoined by the operations of Saturn, Uranus, and Jupiter lining up, etc., what they call the activities of the coming again of Jesus or the Son of God, symbolizes anthropomorphically actually the entry of the energies of the Aquarian age and the dying of the priesthood whose spookiness and misrepresentation of religion had its root in the Piscean age. All that means anthropomorphically. You're dealing with the cosmo, return of Jesus, etc., or justice. There you go. Get used to it.
Now, one of the things I found interesting also when reading this book is where we get the term April Fool.
Yes.
And the fact that when they were running the Moors out of Spain and how they lied to them.
They call that they're running the snakes out of Ireland.
Well, no, when they told
and in Ireland and Spain, keep in mind
when they told them you can go, you're gonna have to leave, but they put them when they put them on the ships and then told them, and they looked back and they saw their homes being burned up,
mostly women and children,
and then they burnt the ships.
Yes.
Set the ship. I don't know whether they jumped over the sides or whatever, but they had the people out the ships and they burnt the ships up.
They promised that they would not kill women and the children. It was mostly women and children. And this is during the time of Boabdil.
Here we go.
But
Says knowing the Moors were let me see, up to this, okay, on March 31st of the same year, a proclamation was issued formally expelling all Jews from Spain. The next day was April 1st, a day which was to be forever remembered in the traditions and lexicon of our culture. Up to this point, the Moors were conquered, but had not been officially expelled or sanctioned. According to long-standing tradition, on April 1st, 1492, the Spanish executed a diabolical plot against the Moors. Any Moors who remained in Spain at that time had been told that they could return to their home country of Morocco. Knowing the Moors were a suspicious lot, the Spaniards provided sailing vessels and docked them at port. When the Moors saw the vessels, they trusted the Spaniards were not lying and proceeded to take their belongings and families to the ships. As the Moors left their homes behind them, the Spanish set fire to them. The ships either set sail or were burned as well, thus leaving the Moors as the first victims of what became known as April Fool's Day. It has been a celebrated tradition since that time. Although the Moors were completely defeated in Europe, it was a persecution that could only get worse. So, April Fools, we think some of these things are these cute little, just like, where people celebrating Thanksgiving thinking it was something that bring families together, when these things that we're celebrating we're celebrating our own demise.
Yes.
And so you keep that energy alive when you celebrate it.
And it's not so much just that, is that they're not aware of what the celebration is because they've been lied to about their own history. And this is back to in the beginning when we open up the treatise and we talk about Napoleonic Wars. When you get in Napoleonic Wars, for those of you who have some scholarship, you recognize that around the world, wherever Napoleon went, he would shoot the noses off of all the historical stone statues to hide or to destroy the Moorish relationship so that they could take claim of being the ancient ones, even ancient Greece. And so you see them start making this common statue of some woman, etc., with a broken arm, etc. And you see that duplication all over the place. And then all the original statues, they shoot their noses off.
I've seen that.
Oh, yeah. Destroy the face features, even with the Sphinx. And that's all over the world. That's why it's important to understand that in order to study American history, you must know Iberian history or the history of Europe.
There's a question.
They absolutely go together. But they have been separated in the minds of the people so that you will not find some of this stuff that we're sharing with you today. And of course, this will take you even further into deeper history, including the Moorish Empire in Iberia or Europe. And that's very important for your concepts to get clear on American history, because you can't know American history without knowing Iberian history, because it's absolutely connected. But people have been trained with this idea of what they think foreign is.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're talking American history, it doesn't dawn on them.
We're an occupation, so
it's not dawn on them that Europe and America is connected. Politically, absolutely.
It's the same thing for the folks that kind of thought that because they call themselves Protestants, that they're no longer under Catholic influence.
Yeah, exactly. Here you go.
It means we protested, but we're protesting.
Are protesting Catholics.
Yeah.
And even, with people not knowing those operations, thinking that is a separate religion, when actually it's a subsection of the Catholic. And all it is them fighting among each other.
Right.
That's all. And it was the priesthood, not necessarily people. The priesthood fighting over spoils that they were robbing from Egypt. That's what it is. They're fighting over spoils that they robbed from Asiatic African countries among themselves. And that's how those orders, Protestant, Methodist, Calvinism, and all of those different sects actually break off of priests among the Catholic order that were fighting amongst each other over spoils, having nothing to do with spiritual development whatsoever. It's all political. That's not a condemnation of people's beliefs in the sense that people look at it, is that they really don't understand that they were political activities and nothing to do with spirituality whatsoever. They just use Jesus as a front. Jesus is more or less a password for political conquest purposes and mental conquest warfare. Totally misrepresented. Unfortunately, but that's true. Hopefully, many of the hybrid European sons and daughters will start telling some of those truths to free not only the mental servitude that many of our people have been suffering, but many of their own have been suffering from for the last few centuries. Because all of us on a large scale are generally out of work because of misinformation. So again, when you're looking at the Constitution for the United States, when you're looking at the hiding of the original 13th Amendment, etc., and the 20 sections, etc., and you'll see also why the members of the Roman Curia and of the Circuit Church and Chancery of the Bar Association, etc., were banned from holding office. Now you'll notice that almost every person, man and women, who are claiming to be congressmen and senators of the United States, etc., are barristers and lawyers. Totally unconstitutional. Now you understand why politically and economically North America and Canada, etc., is in the political shape that they're in right now today. And you'll also know why these continued unending wars are being perpetrated around the world, especially in Asia and Africa. And all of this is still rooted in the Napoleonic Wars. You just give them a different name.
When I think of how few of them there are that are ruling the many.
That's why it's important for them to burn books.
Right. And but again, I always come back to the Dark Crystal.
Oh,
if you have not,
Jim Henson's,
yeah. If you have not seen, I don't know, I know you saw the original, but the remake.
I have the collectors.
Yeah, the remake that came out in 2019, I think it was 2019 or 2018. We thought this was Netflix. It's nine episodes. I think it was 9. Anyway, I binged it all because I needed to see the big picture. Sometimes you just need to watch it. And when it concluded, all I can say, there was the Skeksis and the Gelfins. The Skeksis are them, and the Gelfins are us. It was a few Skeksis, right? Symbolically, a few Skeksis that were ruling and sucking the energy and the life force and the essence of the Gelfins, who, when you looked at them, they didn't all look the same.
Multiple stories at the same time.
Yeah, they didn't look exactly the same, but they were the same. They were all the underlings, so they were all the 99%ers.
Consider the higher self and the lower self, right? Consider the hybriding. Consider cannibalism against children. The essence. The vampirism that's been going on for a couple centuries that the masses have not known that even exists. A lot of things that those animated series actually present.
But the point, because I see I see the comments not only here, but you
Mhm.
hear the conflicts that are within us, and
Yeah,
we're wondering why we're not further along, and we can't see the fact. Well, some see the fact of the matter is we're not any further along because we can't help from fighting each other.
yeah.
So
There's a
if we're
schism.
no, yeah, so the schism. So if we're fighting each other, if we're majoring on minors and doing things that undermine in the whole overall, we never it's one step forward, two step back.
Remember this. Let's go back to let's go back to in relationship the few ruling the many, right?
Right.
Now you already know, and this is common knowledge. This is not like mystery stuff. It's available to anyone, right? From the hybrid Europeans operations and from policies taken from the Napoleonic Wars, right? Introduced into the Whiggamore Party and demonstrated in the philosophy page of the establishment of the General Education Board. This stuff has never been secret. Never been secret. Um, so let's look at the philosophy page, and this is common, of the General Education Board set forth by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates. And you all are familiar with that name, Gates, even to this day, who's trying to stick you with nanoviruses. 1902, philosophy page for the founders of the General Education Board. So how was their plan to dumb the people down to present this conquest of the many by the few, which you see taking place right now, coming from members of the Skull and Bones and Roman Curia and the Circle Church and the Chancery. All these members are members of the Roman Curia. This is their philosophy. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present education conventions fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo, great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is a very simple as well as a very beautiful one, to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. That's the mission that the General Education Board is structured under the operations of what's called animal husbandry. That's how they've been training these people since 1902. And so people wonder how the few are ruling the many. There you go, right in the philosophy page. How many parents, in the name of loving their children, have sent their children to these schools year after year, gotten degrees, and wonder why they can't compete in the real world, and they've never even read the philosophy page for the General Education Board that they're delivering their children to. And I just read it, and it's a paragraph. Is it hidden, Dr. Naila?
No.
Did they say what they're going to do to these children? Is it very clear?
Very clear.
So all you need is a few generations of this, and this is what you have today. Isn't that one of the reasons why we do what we do here at the House of Reawakening Minds? Is it not understandable that as soon as you start exposing this information that you're going to get trolls people who have been benefiting from this destruction of humanity, who don't want people to have this information, who attack what we're presenting as if we're making this stuff up. This is documented. This is the real history, the real chronology, documented for all to research, and more connected to this.
You know what? It's I'm going to interject something that might be crazy, and you know the conversation we had with one of my spiritual daughters the other day.
Yes.
And so this comes to mind when she spoke about what her daughter spoke to her about her ex, and who he was in a previous life and what he had come, to do in this life.
Yes.
Kind of, and I'm convinced when I look at some Moors, they look like us, and in all senses of the words, if you look, but they're not who they appear to be.
Exactly.
Some of these have come back, and reincarnated.
The battle goes on.
They may now have taken on the persona.
Then Duali said to you, he said, be careful, Moors. Some of your own brothers and sisters, your own people wearing turbans and feathers will be trying to put you back into slavery. Which means don't look necessarily. This is just like what you're reading Peter Moon. I talked to Peter, in the early 2003, 4, somewhere in that area. And there's other hybrid European sons and daughters who are telling the truth. Right. You had a European daughter on here on your show.
Michelle Gibson.
Recently. Michelle Gibson. Many of hybrid Europeans are telling the truth. The interest for all of us to do is to do what? To shed those ancient hatreds, tell the truth, and start healing humanity. We cannot preserve civilization on a lie. And the other deal is, Dr. Nayela, in reference to what you were saying earlier, how so few have been ruling the many. The indicator is that the many have been under this mental servitude spell of misinformation. And when that fake or the de facto platform of degrees of knowledge is used to try to solve problems, they never fix anything because they're operating from a false paradigm. And of course, people, because of ego, often are reluctant to admit that they've been wrong or that they've been played. However, they don't have any knowledge to fix anything. So again, we share information with people who have open minds and open hearts. And for those who are the coming generations, who have been deceived by many generations before themselves, both by the hybrids and by the aboriginals, etc., who have other agendas other than honor, that they can have some fundamental truths to operate with, and they can clean up the rest. We'll give them certain fundamental truths. What we always present to you, your self-obligation to study in order to become who you are in a more realistic manner. And do not seek beliefs, seek knowledge, because the people have been destroyed for lack of knowledge. And so most of what we show you can be traced, can be researched, can be cross-referenced for yourselves. And you'll see, again, the motives of many people that come up against this knowledge when it's exposed to you, because it upsets their little Negroite institutions that have been funded by the corporate U.S. corporation franchisee states of corporations to keep you under the black codes. Whenever they tell you, if we bring an issue to you, diversity of nationality, the trolls will start rising, because you'll be cognizant of the fact of when Duali say enforce the Constitution, he's referring to judicial obligations and treaty obligations. And those controversies around the world are argued from a consular perspective. Then if you understand that, you understand Act 1 of the Divine Constitutional Bylaws given to you as a pattern. It's not opinion, that's fact. So get in mind, people who don't want you enforcing treaties and international law, want you to continue to suffer under a color of law. Keep in mind, Raleigh told you, you're not colored people, so you don't do colored things. Color does not mean complexion. Color means fake law, fake positions, fake jurisdictions, prima facie, a semblance distinguished from that which is real. Go look it up in a law book. Go to those who know law, like Raleigh told you in the divine warning.
Questions, comments?
You know, truth is uncomfortable, but we're not trying to make people uncomfortable. We're trying to make life better on this planet for all of us. Because we've been under fraud for a few centuries now. We need to end that crap and dismantle the dark priesthood who's been governing over you. And you need to know that their major corporation has been bankrupt since 2018. Stop funding them. Time for you to start taking responsibility.
There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of things that have been covered up. But going back to Dark Crystal, which is the series that we're talking about, a couple of people have asked, what are we talking about on Netflix, called The Dark Crystal, and it's a Muppet. You know, you have to look at the Muppet show, Muppet movie.
Remember the Muppets? His name was Jim Henson, and Jim Henson did a lot of the
Sesame Street
animated Muppets movies and stuff. Years ago, Jim Henson passed form. One of the major animated movies years ago, late 80s, late 80s, I think it was called The Dark Crystal. And with the Dark Crystal, the crystal implies both crystal, but also is pyramidal. And there's also the shard that caps the mound that's actually like the eye of the pyramid, if you kind of understand that. Even when you look at the astrologers, Jersey has one eye.
Mm-hmm.
So they're talking about the people of the eye. So when you talk about the people of the eye, you're talking Ethiopia. Or that's the people of the eye.
Okay.
Or even when you see the people in the modern hybrid Europeans who are using dark magic, they will blacken an eye, meaning that they conquered you.
How about we would see a lot of these people covering up the?
That's what that is.
They would be covering up.
That's what that is.
Okay.
If you don't know the true history, that you're standing on Egypt, you get it out your mind that Egypt's just on that side. If you keep thinking that Egypt just on the east side, your concepts are wrong. Capital Dominion.
And if you think that it was always a bunch of sand.
Yes.
Because it used to be lush.
Meaning the future proves the past. You just need to know some of the past to recognize what's going on now. When the concepts that the people have that a lot of these things are happening in a vacuum, they are not. People who are governing on Midgard Earth are governing not based on what you think they're governing on. They're governing on a record of ancient Moabite Canaanite history of Saba, codified as Egypt and codified as Jew. It's Hikupta, not Egypt. Hikupta. It ain't Jew, it's Saba. And Saba are Sabians. The Sabians are you, the real people of the land, the Moors. That's the truth. Get over it and start studying your real history and unraveling the confusion of the politics. We just gave you a few keys, that's all. Don't get mad, get wise.
But the point I do want to make is that the end of that particular, at least 2018, 2019, whatever it was, version, remake, what I loved about it was that even though these people, these beings all look different, but they were all under they were all under one. They were the elephants, and excuse me. But when they realized what they had in common, they joined forces in spite of their differences and overcame the Skeksis, the few. And that's what the point I'm trying to make about us as we Moors. If we don't stop fighting, if we don't find common ground with one another, with each other, we will never, we'll always be in this cycle of wondering why we're not where we used to be, because we need to come together. We need to overcome our differences and see what we are, embrace our commonality.
Once these people know, see, this is the whole deal. The commonality is that they're all Moors.
Which is
the fact that they, as long as we keep on allowing the nom de guerre to be presented as legitimate pedigree bloodlines, it will create confusion, it will create civil libera mortuus, and it will support the civil libera mortuus de facto platforms that have been destroying civilization. We must start telling the truth. Now, Joel A. Rogers as an example. This is one of the chapters.
The Negro has more Negro ancestry in aristocratic European families.
Because we are the European families. We're the Aboriginal European families. Now you're dealing Phoenicia, you're dealing Iberia. And by covering that up, they're able to cover up the history here in America. It's all connected. It's all related. There are your coats of arms. Europe. Here are your coats of arms. Europe. Here are your coats of arms. Europe. Here's your coats of arms. Europe. Here's your coats of arms. Europe. Coats of arms. Europe. Coats of arms. Europe. And it goes on and on. You're not told that because they don't want you to know the connection. They don't want you to know that you are the monarchs who were overthrown. However, Diwali came back to restore your nationality and your birthrights, and you need to know it expands much further than a lot of people are telling you. However, he desires for all of us to come back into the constitutional fold of government moral as our forefathers were and our foremothers were, with the honors of our mothers and fathers and respecting all human rights on planet Midgard, etc. Come back and go back to the state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers, because you were the rulers, you were the white rulers who were overthrown. And white is a status, not a complexion. Get over it. While we keep telling you, read in your law book, free white persons. It does not mean Caucasian race, never did. History's been misrepresented to you by people on both sides. So get over that too. And stop being biased and prejudiced and then accusing other people of it. Once you learn some of your real history, it won't be necessary for you to have what you would call low self-esteem. You have no reason to have low self-esteem. You need to be proud of the illustrious history of your ancient mothers and fathers, but you also need to be responsible for us falling away from that illustrious status, dealing with the black code situation, the frauds that have been foisted and imposed upon humanity, and the color code caste system that must be dismantled. Now, take that and roll with it.
Now, here's a question from Jamie Dodger. Is it safe to say that Jamaicans and other Caribbean people are Celtic or Celtic Iberian, Sephardic, Moorish Jews?
Exactly. What do you think you are? That's who you are. Mandinka and Bantu. That's who you are. Stop. Those names of the different territories, most of them aren't even over 150 years old. All of you are Moors, get over it. Entire Western Hemisphere. All of you, verbal linguistic groups, Mandinka, etc., you're all Moors, get over it. Stop looking at the political territorial jurisdictions that have been created since European hybrid colonial operations in the Western Hemisphere under colonial hegemony. Those political jurisdictions are only artificial constructs on paper. We're all the same people. Get over it, brothers and sisters. Thank you very much. You're home. No matter where you walk, to the north or to the south, you're home. Thank you. Don't let them play that green card crap on you. That's only politics. That's not reality. Get out of that false matrix. It's part of the reason the Moorish Divine and National Movement exists. Read chapter 47 of the Circle 7 Quran. That'll give you your basis. And we're talking civics, not religion. We're talking actual political, geographical, and facts, and political jurisdictional facts, not beliefs. Those are facts.
Okay, T-shirt Chief says, how are African immigrants classified when they become citizens of the United States?
United States is a private corporation. Any person that allegedly becomes a citizen of the United States becomes stock, because it's a private corporation. It's not a country. That's a fact. For those of you who doubt it, do research in corporate operation and corporate bankruptcies, and you'll see that the United States Corporation went bankrupt 2018, and it's a private corporation belonging to the Jesuit order of the Bishopric of Rome under the Pope of Rome. It's a private, for-profit, human trafficking corporation that has been presented under pretext as a country since 1861. There you go. The land here that you call country is Morocco. Get over it. It's the Maghreb. And we're not just talking about evening salat. And if you want to key to some of the research, you'll hear Drawley say the term, you'll say, you're really Jews. We don't use that name or that term because the Europeans have been using it, meaning it's misrepresented. But we know that we really Saba, or that you call the real Jew. Everybody knows it but our people. But Jew is a cover-up for Saba. Keep that in mind. Because really there ain't no such thing as Jew. Really Saba. And for those of you who doubt it, look up Sabian. Sabean. Sometimes they'll substitute the E with an I. You want to look at the linguistic groups? Berber, Bantu, Mandinka. There you go. And all of you are part of the family. From the north to the south. And keep in mind, Jew is not a religion. Jew is, you really come from Ibri, or what you people falsely say Hebrew, which is also false. It's Ibri. It's those who cross the river. This is during the time or before the great earthquake. Those of us who cross the river with the super devere or the dividing of the land between Ham and Cush. So you Cushitic people, all of you, Cushites, etc., are Ibri on this side, meaning those of us of the Cushites and the Moabite Canaanites who crossed the river. So those who came to the Maghreb are Ibri, or what you call cover up, is called Jew. Saba, get over it. Stop lying to yourself. And you got a daggone thing to do with religion. It has to do with what was done. Those who crossed over. Those of you over here, yeah, you're the true Jew. You're the true Saba. Get over it. Got nothing to do with belief. It has to do with the real heirs of the land. So by the hybrids covering up the history to steal your estate, they also have condemned themselves in doing so. So they gained the whole world and have lost their soul. That's what they're dealing with right now. They've gained the entire world, deceived the entire world, and have lost their soul. And a few of them, recognizing what's coming cosmically, are trying to redeem themselves by telling the truth, trying to get on the right side of history. I understand it. And many of those adepts around the world understand exactly what I just now said. A lot of demons among our own are angry about what I just now said. Because they got to go too. They're part of the problem.
I want to read a little bit more about from this.
Share some more.
Yeah, I'm
whatever comes to your mind, because really it's important, because you already know it's so much.
And there's a lot of stuff you've said and stuff, but you know, when it's backed up, a lot of times whoever says it depends on.
But also other people always knew this,
right? But
it's just that this literature ain't been shared with our people. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. They're pointing to party books and get high books, whatever. It's the truth.
Let me see. Okay. As the United States declared its independence, Morocco was aggressively interested in pursuing a dialogue and recognizing this country because it had a vested interest in slave citizens and relatives. They were essentially suing for peace. Although Morocco was eager to establish formal relations, the United States was busy with their own war and other problems. They did not respond. After all normal diplomatic channels had been exhausted, Morocco seized various Americans and their ships and held them for ransom. This got the attention of the Americans, and it worked. A peace treaty was worked out and guaranteed that any U.S. citizen in Morocco would be declared a free American citizen if he presented himself to the U.S. consulate and demonstrated his citizenship.
Now, see the consul venue? That's diversity of nationality in all treaty law around the world. See how important history is, Dr. Naila?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Outside of that venue, you're out of order. So therefore, if you're outside the constitutional fold of government, you won't take that position, will you?
Yeah.
So that means you voided your position, doesn't it? Now you see how the black codes have destroyed our people under the 14th Amendment?
Yep.
Trying to be somebody that they're not and become stock for the United States thinking it's a country. It's all trade, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's agreements and trade, isn't it? Didn't Obama say that that treaty between Morocco and the United States is the oldest running treaty in the world?
Yep.
Isn't that apparently the foundation of the politics?
Yes.
In an international venue? Isn't that logical? That the oldest running treaty in the politics of the world is the foundation of your general world's politics, and how come these people don't know about it? Why? Because they thought it was a religion? It's their estate. All of our economics is tied into this.
So a peace treaty was worked out and guaranteed that any U.S. citizen in Morocco would be declared a free American citizen if he presented himself to the U.S. consulate and demonstrated his citizenship. It preserved the rights of all Americans in Morocco. In diplomacy, there is a principle called reciprocity, which means that citizens of different countries will be treated in kind. The U.S. Secretary of State clearly stated in his own handwriting that any Moroccan national would be treated the same as any U.S. citizen in Morocco. In this respect, the so-called apocryphal legend of Drew Ali is astonishingly backed up. The above encourages us to seriously consider another story passed down through antiquity. This concerns a meeting that Drew Ali had with President Woodrow Wilson. Noble Drew Ali claimed to have written a letter to President Woodrow Wilson and asked him for the Moroccan flag. The Wilson connection is once again ironic because President Wilson was a known KKK sympathizer who endorsed the racist movie Birth of a Nation, which featured a white supremacist by the name of Ben Cameron. There is an account that Drew Ali actually met with President Wilson and asked for the flag. When Wilson and his people asked him what flag he was talking about, Ali told them it was hidden in their vault. After going to the vault room, all the president's men brought out all sorts of flags, but he told them it was much older. As they dug deeper, they came upon a red flag and said that it was the flag of Morocco. Ali is said to have stated, "I am here for the Moorish flag, that which you call a cherry tree." The full account of this alleged meeting is a little suspicious because it indicates that the Moroccan flag was red with a green star. At the time of George Washington, the Moroccan flag that would have been given to the president was only plain red, some say to honor the blood of the Prophet of Islam. This indicates that a black faction may have been embellishing what happened because the green star was only added to the Moroccan flag around or after this meeting with President Wilson was said to have occurred. The ostensible reason for adding a green pentagram was that the international seafaring community had problems with the plain Moroccan flag as it confused mariners who already had their own established use for red flags. The embellishing of the Drew Ali story was not really necessary if they had appealed to a higher truth. A more astute observer would have realized that the green pentagram added to the red flag is even more significant. Accordingly, Morocco adopted the pentagram, which they called the Seal of Suleiman, and colored it green to honor the color of Islam. Without actually observing all of the actual history concerning the bizarre synchronicities involved with the cherry tree, it is very hard to say how much of what occurred with it is intentional. It is quite clear, however, that some outside force was orchestrating a synchronicity that could not easily be explained. This will become clear as the story develops. After his alleged meeting with President Wilson, Drew Ali continued his life mission, which was to lead his people out of a mental poverty that had put them at the bottom rung of the ladder. His method to lift them was his own version of Islam. He also noticed that the only successful members of his race were those who imitated the conquerors of his people. There was no great imam or sheik who taught anything that was indigenous or respectful of their original culture. In this vein, he became their leader and created quite a stir in the world of the Roaring Twenties. If you care to read the newspapers of the day, you will find that Drew Ali commanded such a following that he was closely monitored by the government as a potential power that had to be reckoned with. There were even huge revivals that outdid Christian enterprises. In fact, Drew Ali's meetings included stirring renditions of Muslims, that old-time religion borrowed from the trite evangelical Christian ditty you likely heard. The movement was huge. Ali was billed as a healer too, and was said to produce miracles in his own right. By most accounts, the man seemed to be humble and unpretentious, although some have tried to defame him. Mostly everyone ignores Drew Ali. In the background of the religious dogma was the Moorish Science Temple, which has also been portrayed as having other names. In the midst of all this excitement and hoopla, there was one very penetrating truth. Drew Ali had a reputation that has surpassed that of any black man in the entire history of America. He was not only dangerous to the powers that be, he was in a position to wield a considerable amount of power. As is typical in any scene of power with Homo sapiens, his lieutenants and adjutants were all poised to make a grab at this incredible power, particularly if he was to suffer incarceration from the authorities or to die. Into this thriving scene of Black America rallying behind Drew Ali as an international religious leader entered one of the most intriguing and dubious characters in history, particularly Black Muslim history. This man's name was Wally Fard. I'm going to stop right there.
Mm-hmm. You know, and you'll begin to see the politics, particularly when you go into the FBI papers and you see the intrigue and the subversion that took place in that whole area of the late 20s. Then you'll recognize why Drew Ali, one of the counter moves that he made was to adopt a religious affidavit to the Moorish Holy Temple of Science to protect the estates of the Moors or their homes. And he set up a trust. People were to put all their stuff in trust to be protected. And of course, during that time, they murdered him because they already knew that that motivation or that momentum was killing the stock market. And this is again why the U.S. corporation company went bankrupt in 28, etc. Same year that he adopted the affidavit. And then you see what took place with Delano Roosevelt in 33, with them using all birth certificates to refund the United States Corporation Company again. And that went bankrupt in 2013. Then they started again, and then went bankrupt in 2018. Then all of a sudden, this strange sickness appeared that everybody got a mask on for. If you think this stuff is not tied together, you really need to study history.
And for those who are asking the question, I'm reading from Synchronicity and the Seventh Seal by Peter Moon.
You can show it. It's the cover of that book.
Hold up a little bit. There.
And this is the cover of Nature Knows No Color Line. Now, another point is, it's not that this information is not available to people, it's that people who have interest in keeping our people in servitude and ignorant don't want this kind of information out because it kills a lot of those corporate Negroite, corporate funded 501c3 churches, mosques, and synagogues that actually come under Skull and Bones, that's been keeping this fake black code paradigm operative, that's been keeping the U.S. stock market alive. That's why they want you to keep calling yourself black and Negro, because it's all stock. It's not really the real people of the land. Real people of the land are Moors. They are the Aboriginal, indigenous people, proper heirs of the North Gate of Maghreb, of Mexam, etc. That's the fact. And all treaties, the oldest treaties, are by your mothers and fathers. So go back to the state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers and enforce the treaties, i.e., thus the constitutional obligations that the hybrid Europeans have to those treaties, etc., and to the Republican form of government set forth via that Constitution enforcing the treaties. Now that's a fact. Get to work, y'all. Stop pretending you don't know.
Here's a question.
And keep in mind, while our people have been playing games, the Whiggamores have been fighting among each other over your estate. They're just hiding behind the Democratic and Republican Party. They're the Whiggamores. They got to wear wigs, but you don't. Because you got them antennas.
So here's a question. Antoine Darrell says, it's respect. I'm originally from Bermuda, but now living in England. Do you know anything about the GOM, G-O-M Bays? GOM-BEY apostrophe S. GOM Bays?
The Bombays.
It's GOM with a G.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Go back to the Picts, the Moors, and the Dubs. And when you're looking at England land, you know you're still home. You're looking at Iberia. And when you're looking at the islands, you're looking at the same. All of it's yours. You need to understand that. Same like when those of you in the islands and you're talking about the Maroons, still talking about Moors. The Maroons are Moors. Get over it. They're just simply brothers and sisters among the island people who try to preserve and keep the culture.
Here's a question. Why don't, quote unquote, they reveal that it was the Moorish womb men who defeated the Brits in the Revolutionary War?
Here we go. Hey, aren't we back to Moorish history? Your connection to the land. Act like you know. They just hide it by calling us Indians. None of it's a secret. It's just that people need to know the difference between the nom de guerre that were used to separate us from each other, and the different territorial names and tribal names which were used or emphasized to make us think that we're different people when we're just simply the same people of different territories, tribes of nations. Tribes are simply no different than you would call the different nation territories or what you would call the states territories. You look at the tribes in the same perspective because the state territorial jurisdictions were based on tribal rules. It's a duplication and a reflection of the same. And so when you look into Whiggamores, and you're looking at the Whiggamore conscience Whigs and the Cotton Whigs, i.e. the Republican Party and Democratic Party, just look at the Honesty Confederation, and then look at the Powhatan Confederation, etc. It's just simply a copy of what was already here.
I think the interesting point with regard to the D's and the R's is that when you, in terms of, I think a lot of folks have to see in this short 100 days what those who did actually go out and cast a ballot for what they did is probably it's very apparent. But I don't think as many realize, not maybe the ones here in this, we're very astute here on this chat, but I don't know if the masses realize that Mr. T, we'll just call him Mr. T. So he wasn't really, like you said, definitely wasn't on the D side, and the R's didn't respect him because he was, a lot of them were just as involved in the mess as the D's. So he came for a totally different, like you always said, he was chosen or
he was appointed,
assigned, and so forth.
The corporation is dead.
Right. Who assigned him?
You can look at it from a perspective of divine fate. And that's included on a secondary level with generals and admirals who have been operatively constructing a plan to counter the operations of the Roman Curia operations that took place with the coup d'etat of 1861, March the 27th, with the overthrow of the Lincoln administration to undermine the republic. Now, like you hear Dr. Nail about Q and QAnon that they're talking about
17.
Today? Do you know that started during the Lincoln administration and not recently the way people think it is?
Really?
That started during the Lincoln administration.
Hmm.
It was just reactivated by Mr. T.
Okay.
That's the truth. The more you know about the real history, it's not only going to shock you, but you need to. It's like this. For people to ignore what's going on is to ignore their economic and political fate. And you're not going to hide from this because the dark priesthood is willing to sacrifice all of you to maintain power. So you think that because you're not involved, that you're not involved, you got a wrong thing coming. All you're going to do is make yourself easier grass to cut by ignoring it. I suggest that every man, woman, and child get involved with confessing their own, because what you don't confess, they plan to steal and liquidate, and then remove you so that you can make no claim. That's honestly what their missionary operations are right now, politically. And if you think that ignoring these matters gets you out of it, I'm not even going to argue with you. You will find out soon enough, and you're not going to go to no new generation with this crap going on, thinking that it's not going to become a reality for you. Because you're if you don't die tomorrow, you'll live through this. You're going to live through what's coming. That's a guarantee. You're not going to ignore it safely. Let's put it that way.
I think I heard the pastor that was talking to Greg saying something like it was akin to paying the hitman to kill you last. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's basically what it is. That's basically what it is. Those who ignore what's going on now is ignoring it at their peril. I'm not condemning people. I'm just observing truth. People are afraid because in their heart of hearts they know that Romans are cold-blooded murderers, and Rome has always done things to undermine anything that deals with justice. Or they keep crucifying Jesus over and over again. Jesus means justice, and so they hide and they think that because they won't take a stand or position of opposition to the corruption, that the corruptors won't sacrifice them. They're just simply easier food. Because Rome is ruthless. You better believe they're ruthless. And not because I say so, they're going to prove it to you. They've been proving it for these last few years. And if you notice that everything they've been doing has been more and more blatant relative to censoring you, cutting you off in your economics, hurting people literally, bluntly in the street. No justice, no justice, no justice, and you haven't figured out yet that they're not your friend, and that they're not your government, that they're the enemy of humanity, and the enemy of constitutions and treaties. We don't have to keep telling you because they're going to prove it to you. And if you don't take a position, they're going to eliminate you physically and still steal all your stuff. You think you don't rock the boat and they're not going to take your stuff. Well, you got another thought coming because they intend to sacrifice it. And the more blind you pretend to be, the easier it's for them to eliminate you physically and economically, because that's what their intention is. That's what the pattern is. And keep in mind, for those of you who know the real politics and have done research on corporations, defunct corporations, in recent years, you'll find among them the United States Corporation. Now, what they're trying to do is extinguish many of the people because they've stole all the pension plans, all of them. All of them. And rather than acknowledge that that's why they're putting elderly in nursing homes to kill them off under the guise of some secret germ type thing, well, it's not accidental because they've stolen all their retirement funds. And they know that when these people finally figure out what they've been doing, like Bush Sr. said, they might lynch them from the nearest pole. That include all them corner store persons who keep claiming to love Jesus who've been paid off to keep these people passive while they've been getting raped, while they've been getting skull and bone kickbacks, 501c3s that Lyndon Baines Johnson set up. Don't think that the assassination of Kennedy is not connected to this, because that is too.
There is I can't really say what it is, but but there's something on the flash drive that I recently put on in the under House of Reawakening Minds folder that is very, very interesting. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
The kid.
Yes.
And I can't get this, but I put it there.
Yeah.
And they really need, if you don't have a new.
And, you know, this is the other thing, Dr. Naila. People have been thinking that the history and the chronology of the activities have been in a vacuum. The more you understand that the past is tied to the present. Cognitively tied to the present. Not circumstantially tied to the present. Cognitively tied to the present. And so are all political activities. Therefore, it's important for you to know the history. So we're sharing with you some of it, i.e. the truth about American politics. Thus, you must know about the Whiggamore Party. Because your concepts will be wrong if you don't. And you can easily be misled by persons who are misrepresenting, as they have been, the political platforms operating at North America. And the more you know about this, the more you'll know their motives to have hidden this information and why. But then you also, if you care about your family and yourselves, you start taking responsibility and start getting yourself a little bit more competent than you have been in your social political affairs. Because it's not dancing around you just because you've been ignoring it. Just keep in mind, while you're talking politics, you're still talking about spiritual warfare too. Because that's what's going on. So you think that they're separate because somebody told you that, it will be to your peril to keep entertaining that state of mind.
Here's so that's a fact, Taj, because how did Chief Joseph get a cuneiform tablet that translated to Assyrian landing?
Still here. Everything is connected. See, this is the whole deal. People got to stop disconnecting these things. They've presented history in a disconnected, vacuum type format when it's all tied together. The present proves the past. You can call prophecy if you want to. It's just that you got to know code words that they've used to hide the history. And also the motive of changing names or using transliterations of names so that you don't trace yourself back to yourself.
I'm seeing some stuff in the chat that's very disturbing tonight, and I'm going to try to be cool. That's why we can't get anywhere. Like I said,
well, it's what it is.
Fighting. Disrespect.
It's what it is. It's going to be there. It's going to be there.
Disrespect.
Remember, this is what Drew Ali said. It'll be only a handful. You know why? Because the darkness. Why did we fall? Is it not been because of dark spirits? Has it not been because of treason? Is it not what the world is suffering in all governments today? Treasonous activities? Have all of the governments been so corrupt that they've been robbing the people? That's indeed the fact, isn't it? Has it not been that many of the platforms for jobs of people and organizations have been constructed for the very purpose of maintaining the corruption or protecting the corruption and protecting people's images who have supported the corruption? And isn't it interesting that when you start telling the truth, it's sort of like you're shining a light on people who otherwise have a different image to the people. And once the people start looking at this information, it exposes a lot of people on all sides, all sides. And when, how do you say, when the light shines on some people, they get upset because some people aren't who they've been presenting themselves to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the other, you know, the deal of it is that knowledge empowers people that were otherwise politically and socially uh, disempowered or disenfranchised because they recognize that their concepts have been wrong, and that a lot of our lack of unity and a lot of our lack of progress has been because we've been dealing with improper or false or misleading information. And once people start recognizing that a lot of the schisms that exist among our people is because they haven't known the real history, and also is that they suspected that the enemy was just hybrid Europeans, not knowing that the enemies were among our own.
Yep.
And I always tell, you know, like I've always said to people, Dr. Naila,
Mm-hmm.
don't accept what I say, do some research and prove it wrong. And in the process, you'll become a scholar. But you'll also uncover a lot of enemies that are right around you. But if you love your children and you love your family, you're going to deal with the truth as you find it. And you will find it. If you seek the truth will find you.
Mm-hmm.
It will. Because it's always been there. And in spite, you know, the other interesting thing, Dr. Naila, even though the hybrid Europeans and Constantinians, under the guise of Christianity, have been burning books, hiding history, restricting, blocking, sanctioning, demonetizing, confiscating people's accounts, censoring people, there's still enough history and information available to liberate anybody who really wants to be mentally liberated. And of course, before you can help liberate people politically, they must be liberated mentally. Know you the truth, and the truth will help set you free from fake government, fake religion, fake organizations, and fake institutions, i.e., colored structures. That's a fact. To understand when you start exposing the platform of the cards that have been used by the corrupt dark priesthood, they get angry quickly and they send their trolls out. You're not telling the truth. They made that up. Well, do some research for yourself. We're just giving you some points of reference. And as you learn the truth, some of it's going to make you angry. Some of it's going to make you emotional. But I suggest don't do either. Study it and get wise and start baptizing yourself with a new mind.
Yeah, and I mean, and we were talking about this too, expanding some of what is taught, and which is, getting to that, which is the reason for my new channel.
Yeah.
But
and remember, like in harmony with what you were saying about the new channel, Robert Raleigh said, half has not been told. If I told you everything, you'd go back to sleep. The more you study, the more you find out where he was actually directing us. Not only do you find more about yourself, find out more about the world and the politics.
Yeah, because we tend to go. Some of us jump on our nationality, and we get tunnel vision,
limited,
and very limited. And so we have this myopic view of our world. It's just right in here, and you're missing everything that's outside the periphery.
Yes.
And so
Did you notice, in harmony, really, with some of your plans and thoughts, or even setting up a new channel, how, what is it that you recognize, and even a lot of things we do here at the House of Reawakening Minds, because of the ongoing war against the people, that when you start telling the truth, there's a concerted effort politically to sanction and to block and to censor, which makes things necessary. What more proof do the people need that these people are not their government?
I mean, not tonight, but there was a couple of, maybe it was last month or something. I see all the comments, not all of them, but I try to catch them. I see enough of them, and you know how I get emotional about stuff, and you tell me not to. So,
but
I was cool this time because I read a comment, and it literally, I don't even know, somebody said that you and I were agents,
nice.
And I thought,
we are.
Then I said, of change, of truth.
The agents for the truth.
Right. Choose the change. Right. We have no hidden agenda. It's just that our people wake up.
Can't they find what we just told
them? Validate it. Verify it for yourself.
Yes.
Don't expect us to give it all to you, but let us give you enough to make you hungry enough to want the rest.
Exactly. For yourself.
Right. There's no satisfaction like the satisfaction that comes with you seeking and finding.
And this is the truth. Everybody listening, and we ourselves here, are agents for either good or evil. Now, that's the truth. Problem. Have the conditions of the planet Midgard Earth proven to be governed by people who had good intentions for the people, or does it prove that they had negative, evil, and destructive intentions for the people? So isn't it logical when anyone speaks any information that counters their activities or their platforms that they get upset? So you have agents for the dark and you have agents for the light. Know them by their works. Other issue is this. Anybody can disagree. Prove it wrong. And make yourself public. And prove it wrong. You notice how they stay in the shadows? You know how they say they got something to say in the background?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they get out in the front and produce literature if they got the truth? They don't want it out there because it exposes them too.
It's just many people they want you to do the digging and the harvesting, and then they want you to prepare it, and then they want you to make sure that what you prepared is to their liking. When
everybody doesn't come in flavors.
I know that, but
I'm telling strawberry.
I know that.
It doesn't come in vanilla. It comes both clean and dirty. There's no good without that its admixture of evil. You're learning such things metaphysically to cast that evil off from it.
Okay.
It's called separating the wheat from the chaff. And everybody, uncomfortably, because it's uncomfortable for everybody, all of us. Is that everybody, like we said a few years ago, Dr. Naila, people are uncomfortable because everything is being shaken up. Everything is being challenged. And everyone is being uncomfortable because they're being forced to prove their gods.
And there's a lot of uncertainty that's going on right now.
Because it was uncertain before, they just didn't admit it.
Yeah, somebody was saying, I saw a comment and something about that Trump is not really for the people because he was encouraging them to take the vaccines. But I don't think he was encouraging for them to take those.
No, he
I
was
think
encouraging people.
it was the
They
H.
had their choice.
It was, but it was the early on.
Yes, the
early H, early
which
on,
is a vaccine.
which is a vaccine and not an
The
experimental
other stuff
drug.
is not.
Yeah. So he was.
And again, like we said, we're not do the research. And this is again why, you know, like a lot of times you have to qualify. We're not supporting him. We're just saying what they're dealing with and his assignment.
You need to know the truth.
Yeah, what it is.
It is what it is, but you need to know the truth.
Because remember, like we said before, no matter what the Whiggamores do, whether the conscience Whigs or the cotton Whigs, they're battling over your estate. Keep that in mind. So your responsibility is to do what? Confess your own. My responsibility to confess your own. My responsibility to confess my own. Your responsibility to confess your own. Every man, every woman, every child. Keep in mind, this is the age of Aquarius. Nobody's bearing everybody's cross anymore. Don't look for that. That's not going to happen. Get to work. Get off the keisters. Stop looking for sacrificial lambs. This is not the age of sacrificial lambs. That was in Pisces.
Mm-hmm. Well,
the dark priesthood are being removed. Logically, they're going to fight harder. And those who have been helping them, the minions, logically will get upset. And most of them are your paid trolls. So you don't get mad at them, you know they're going to be there. You know, like you don't get in a basketball game and don't expect them to try to score points, do you? The truth withstands scrutiny. The lie doesn't.
fine. Someone wanted to know if the Chinese recognize our claim, the Moorish claim to the sovereigns of the land. Moorish claim.
Say again?
Did the Chinese recognize Moorish claim?
Do the Moors recognize Moorish claims? Do they?
Do the Moors? All Moors? Some do, some
What the
don't.
world don't recognize is the black codes that they've been practicing on.
The question was about General Ham. I can't. Somebody's here. Someone asked, can you touch on theocracy?
Theocracy simply means God study, or principles or structure of theocracy is a structure of government that recognizes divinity. Theo means God principle. Cracy, which means study or structure, political structure.
Oh, David says, I find it amusing that King Solomon's real name was Jedediah, and the Wiggers make a move. Oh, I think they mean a movie called The Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, so they always tell you. One thing, you know, this is an interesting thing too. The hybrid Europeans, when they make their movies, often use those platforms and tell real history or politics in sometimes animated or movie structures. If you know the history, you can see that they're talking.
Yeah, there's a lot of, just like when what was the movie with the first time I heard, I guess more besides hearing it from you when I first met you was probably the movie with Martin Lawrence and
Black Knight.
The Black Knight.
And also the movie with Will Smith, Wild Wild West.
And well, I didn't see that
also,
one.
Anthony Hopkins. with True Romance.
Hmm.
I mean, and also with
This person
you also probably to remind you of The Bell with Sidney Poitier.
Bell.
The Bell. Of course, well, I've talked to his brother very often. You know, his brother's nationalized.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. And you know, I mean, this stuff is not unknown. It's you know, when somebody points it out to you and you look back, you'll see that you've been told many times.
Hmm. Yes.
El Cid, the movie El Cid.
I've heard of the name El Cid.
El Cid with what was that guy named? The actor. I forget his name.
My goodness.
Right on the tip of my tongue. But you know, it's just that people, you know, Dr. Nayela, it's just that people have been trained under the Black Coast for so many generations, it goes past your ears. You know what I mean? Our people generally are in a state of disassociation. And so you think you haven't heard it because it hasn't what resonated, if you get the point.
Right.
And then when you become conscious, what we call conscious or enlightened, it resonates.
I want to give condolences to, I'm not sure, Bendy Guyana is, well,
Got to be very clear. I don't know.
Well, they say that the baby brother just passed Sunday morning a week after taking second Moderm V. Initially said last year he wouldn't until more years of study on it. And these are the things that they're not, you know, we here at the House of Your Awakening Minds give you our condolences. And there are many more like that. The story's not being told. Yes. The truth's being suppressed. You know, everybody everybody's coming out of the woodwork, every so-called star, the ones that they haven't taken off the scene yet, to try to get everybody else to play Russian roulette with your life. So it just now that makes me angry, because
we have an unfortunate situation, you know, on the planet now, Dr. Nyla,
yeah,
where we, you know, keep telling people is that the dark priesthood is coming out in the open. They're not even hiding things. They're just literally attacking the people. And part of it is if the people don't wake up, they're going to be fodder. You know, it's hard, but people are going to have to learn to render unto Caesar what is Caesar and learn what that really means. Because there's a lot of people among your own that keep delivering you to these demons.
have to and somebody said, and I've seen it on, like in Canaan land, whoever this official was, like, we're gonna go to knock on doors and do what? I saw where people who they consider mentally challenged, they're forcing them to take it.
They're exterminating. Didn't they say in King Alfred what they were going to do?
Mm-hmm.
We've been telling people King Alfred for 25 years.
Roscoe Duncan says, what did the divine prophet say? If I can teach you to think,
if
you will save yourself.
You
save yourselves.
Save yourselves.
And that's what we try to do.
We're trying to get the people to think. We're not trying to micromanage. People still want to be micromanaged. They want somebody to micromanage and judge. My position is, if you get these people active and thinking again, get them thinking and move on. Get more thinking, because they're going to need each other. And you need thinkers. People are thinking outside the box. You need them. Don't condemn. Learn something. Everybody has been given or gifted with some of the information or some of the keys for the liberation. Respect that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Dr. Nail,
Yes.
and for the listeners to even comprehend some of the motive while we're talking about the Whiggamores, and for people who don't understand the consular position,
Mm-hmm.
let's read from Law Book. All right, I'm going to share with you all from Law Book, directly from Law Book, United States Code of Law, etc., in relationship to those matters. Give me, while I'm pulling this up, I'm pulling up one of my lesson books to share with you directly the support in harmony with those who are put in law or put in place to make law and to enforce law, and why, and in relationship to the nationality. Now, this is directly from the Law Book, the Code of Laws of the United States of America. It's not the corporation. This is the political platform distinguished from the corporation. The Code of the Laws of the United States of America of a general and permanent character in force January the 3rd, 1935, 1934 edition, consolidated, codified, set forth, and published in 1935 in the 159th year of the Republic, with ancillaries and index. Title 22, Foreign Relations and Intercourse. Page 9, Chapter 2, Consular Courts. Section 141, Judicial authority generally to carry into full effect the provisions of the treaties of the United States with certain foreign countries, the ministers and consuls of the United States in China, in Siam, in Turkey, in Morocco, in Muscat, in Abyssinia, in Persia, and the former territories formerly a part of the former Ottoman Empire, including Egypt, duly appointed to reside therein, shall, in addition to other powers and duties imposed upon them, respectively, by the provisions of such treaties, respectively, be invested with judicial authority described in this chapter, which shall appertain to the to the office of minister and consul, and be a part of the duties belonging thereto, wherein and so far as the same is allowed by treaty, and in accordance with the usages of the countries in their intercourse with the Franks or other foreign Christian nations. So foreign is not distance, is it? It's jurisdiction.
Wow. They took down the organite video and put it back up or leave her link, her website for an organite. I'm not sure what video that was.
Well, you can't know because we've done so many.
But
Unless
organite
they're
video.
being specific.
I don't know. I don't know that I had an organite video up. Please tell everyone. With like a list of suggested books. I guess I could put. I'm reading so many books.
Some of them that we present also Moorish Empire in Europe. It's a series of books, about 3 books. I think you have that here. We got so many books upstairs and downstairs and in boxes.
What's that? Those are all like mostly what's the name of What were you looking for?
Moorish Empire in Europe.
I don't think I have that.
373.
No, I don't have
I have
it.
them home, but that would be a good series of books. The ones we showed you would be good. Stanley Lane Poole, Moors in Spain. What else? Ancient and Modern Britons would give you a better concept of even Nature Knows No Color Line and the information in there, and the monarchies of Europe, the original monarchies that were overthrown during the Napoleonic Wars, and recognize that you are the true Iberians or Europeans, the Picts and the Moors, etc. And then you'll understand that the overthrow will include not just the Maghreb or Morocco or America, i.e., it will include Iberia or Europe. And most of the power transfer that manifests as the politics today would be from the mid 1800s. That's again why it's important for you to know the history of the Whiggamore Party, because they've carried out most of the policies up to the day under the guise of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. This is why they maintain a monopoly. If you notice that they don't allow any other parties to take any hold here in North America, and it goes unchallenged, and if it does, it's squashed or it is censored. People need to understand the politics. See, because if we're going to fix anything, you got to know that we can't keep protecting our own biases and images.
By its name, the meaning of its name, two the prefix and the suffix, poly, many, ticks, bloodsuckers, many bloodsuckers, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
it is. They feed off of, first of all, the ignorance of the people,
and they promote it in the first place.
Yeah.
But then
the resources and everything else.
The people are the stock.
They are elected to go and serve the interests of, and then when they get where they're going, they only serve their own interests. I mean, like I said, I see folks that I know when I watch the so-called address that was the other day, a person that I know very well, prominently walking down the aisle, and to me, they may see this, but to me, anybody who serves a term down there and then goes back again has been gotten.
Mm-hmm.
To me, if you have any integrity, once you find out that there's a swamp, you do whatever you can to get out. You don't get another term.
Yes. But the deal of it, see, this is what must be comprehended, Dr. Naila, is that the platform itself is constructed under a fraud. And this is why it's important for people to know that the United States corporation is not the country. And so people keep assuming that there's a legitimate political operation in its structure when it's de facto. And this is back to really people, a lot of times when we're discussing, do people really understand what de facto means and what de jure means? See, so what's happening is the people keep expecting de jure activity from a de facto platform. But the deal is they don't know that the platform is de facto. See the point? So they're making assumptions. And this is back to, again, why it's important for people to know the Whiggamores. That these are what? Substitutes. That they're imposters. That they're imitators. And that everything that they do is what? Colored. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality. So what happens if the people don't know the reality? They keep vesting themselves into a fake platform, getting bad results, and then getting confused. Because they have what? False expectations, don't they? Because they're assuming that the platform is constitutional, don't they? When the platform is not constitutional. So if the platform is not constitutional, i.e. not legitimate, do they do legitimate legislation? Or do they do color of legislation? Do they exercise proper delegated constitutional and treaty authority, or do they exercise de facto or color of authority, which is what they've been doing? And then people have been what? Diverted by arguing racism and prejudice, which is not the issue. And then the people keep supporting it, expecting a different result. Is it not true, Dr. Naila, as our people have been sending their children to school generation after generation, and I just read to you what's documented and available to anybody who reads the philosophy page of the owners and establishers and founders of the General Education Board that's been messing their children up, and they have said bluntly what they're going to do to the children. Mm-hmm. And how many people would come as trolls and try to act like we said something wrong when we're talking documents, their own stuff? So logically, people who have been a part of that platform are going to be offended that they're being exposed with this information, wouldn't they be? Because they've been saying they love our children, they love our people. They got degrees on the wall. They're part of the fraud too, aren't they? Mm-hmm. And so they think we're attacking them. We're just exposing the truth. We're not. It's not personal. If they take it personal because it exposes them. Mm-hmm. So we're agents for the truth, aren't we? But they act like it's a negative, don't they? What is their motive? Their motive becomes apparent the more people learn. And the more people do research in this information that we're sharing, the angrier they're going to get. But I suggest you don't get angry, get wise. And take responsibility in your affairs. I know truth is, people, truth makes people uncomfortable. I understand that. But, we can't afford to keep maintaining this ignorance.
We're almost at that time. And I'm gonna post this.
Anyway, Dr. Naila, I wanted you to, if you don't mind, also share a little bit more with the people. Anyway, for you all, thank you for sharing the night with us here at the House of Reawakening Minds, and please subscribe to Dr. G's new YouTube channel, Dr. G's Official.
Dr. G is official.
Dr. G is official. As capital D, small r, capital G, small I, small s, capital O, FFICIAL. Yeah. So YouTube requires 1,000 subscribers in order for the channel to go live. So
we got 185. It's about 1,100, yes. Almost 1,200 folks. It's over 1,200 folks here. All I need is 885 of them.
Yeah, the link will be posted in the chat. Right so there. Look up the link.
Right here.
It will be, yes. Post the link in the chat. And anyway, thank you all for supporting House of Reawakening Minds. Keep in mind, the House of Reawakening Minds, the official House of Reawakening Minds, is here to support you, people, and to help in the ongoing work of helping to uplift fallen humanity. And keep in mind, the half has not been told. Like the Prophet Noble Ali said, I told you everything, you go back to sleep. He also said, I've given you more than enough to raise a nation. Now, go out and raise your people. Help uplift your people. Help restore your nation. Go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers. The house supports you, support the house. Have a grand evening.
Well, I just want to add to that. Somebody just said I need 4,000 hours too, but that's not what I was told. I need 1,000 subscribers. So I need at least 885 more, 815 of you all to
share.
Please go and go to Dr. G is Official. When you search on YouTube for Dr. G is Official, it's going to pop up with Darius is Official. Is that what you were looking for? No, underneath you really want Dr. G is Official, all one word. And if I can get up to, when I get up to 1,000, not if, I'm going to do something different. We are over on that channel. This channel is not going away. You'll still have Grand Sheik here on House of Reawakening Minds, and office hours may move over to the new channel. But we definitely want to do some other things over there that you're going to want to know and want to be a part of. So please give us some likes and please subscribe. There's enough of you on here where we can hit that 1,000 tonight. Also, as Grand Sheik said, we always appreciate your support of House of Reawakening Minds. Those of you, so even those of you who are purchasing the USB drive, there's a lot of new information on there. There's over 750, maybe 55. I think there's about 755 documents on there now, and a lot of things that will give you hours and hours of study and research time.
Send you on a journey for years, to be honest with you.
So, if you're interested in a USB drive, I have been putting up the just text me. You don't have to say anything but USB drive. You don't have to write a letter. You don't have to say I want it, or just put USB and we'll text you. I'll text you back the link so that you can order it. Appreciate you. Appreciate those support. Also, there will be no next week. There will be no office hours with Dr. G on Tuesday, and there will be no regular House of Reawakening Minds on Friday. This is a vacation week. Grand Sheik is going on a much, much, much well-deserved and needed vacation, and I'm going to be out of commit. I'm not going to be available either. So I'm taking a vacation too. So let us hopefully you'll go back into the archives and relook at some of the very, very informative presentations that have been made, and we will be back the week of, I believe that is the 9th, 10th. I think it is the week of the 10th. If you look at Monday, I'll be back on the 11th, and I believe Grand Sheik, you will be back on the 3rd Friday. Correct?
Yes.
Perhaps something like that. Tonight was in place of next Friday, and we thank you for all of your support and your attentiveness. I ask you, be kind to yourself and be kind to each other. Do your best. We're gonna overcome all of this, as Grand Sheik calls it, BS Kidor.
Yeah.
We have to overcome it with love and love for self.
Patience.
And patience. And when you love yourself, then it's not hard to love somebody else. And we may not all agree, but we have to find our common ground in which to stand. And that's the place that I believe that we will be able to move towards our liberation. When we come together as one, we'll be able to defeat as one mighty power. But as long as we fractionalize and coming against each other, we're never, ever, ever going to come out of this.
Don't practice the schism, because remember, that's a tort response.
Absolutely.
It's not part of the culture. It's a tort response.
So, thank you. We appreciate your support. Our House of Reawakening Minds. Hopefully, we're going to be able to soon have live presentations again, Grand Sheik. Yes. We'll be able to these things begin to relax. But we're also looking to do some workshop. I know. I mean, when I say relax, I'm talking about when these restrictions relax. But in the meantime, we are working on
the transitions are being made.
Zoom workshops, and a couple of things that you'll be able to take part in. But again, I need you to go over to Dr. G is official, and did I put that up? Showed up or not, but please do. Let me get 1,000 tonight. How about it? Hey, John. I don't know. There's the link there. Thank you so much. Keep waking up others. Keep loving each other, and we get there. We'll get there. Thank you so much. Different, different. What it is, this is the best. Are you willing to believe? Oh, come with me, 'cause I know what is true. That what's at stake is for you. Don't believe in the light. I can look to the sky. Hey, I can fly. I can know if I know what is true. And now you know what's at stake for you. Don't believe in the sky. Hey, I'm